On March 2, 2013, Clay County Sheriff deputies responded to a complaint at a motel located at 1656 Wells Road in Orange Park, Florida. Witnesses reported a young white male behaving strangely. The young man was later identified as 19-year-old Daniel Lissenbigler Jr. According to police reports, Lissenbigler was under the influence of a drug or other substances. Lissenbigler was arrested for indecent exposure and trespassing. After he was taken into custody, Lissenbigler's father, Daniel Sr., repeatedly called the Clay County Sheriff's Office. Daniel Jr. had been suffering from a health condition and he needed medical care. His father was concerned, so he provided all the information he had to Clay County Sheriff officials. But on March 12, 2013, when Daniel Sr. called the Clay County Sheriff's Office to check on his son's welfare, Daniel Sr. was told that Daniel Lissenbigler Jr. had died that night in police custody.
Yes, I'm calling to report Clay County, Florida, Green Cove Springs County Jail. Daniel Lissenbigler was murdered in there Tuesday morning. The police officers tied him to a restraint chair, sprayed mace in a bag, and put it over his head. He was crying and begging for his life. Please take it off, it's burning me. Please take it off. He started gasping for air. About 5 minutes later, he went quiet, and it took him about 15 or 20 minutes to get help to him.
The Sheriff Department's explanation for Daniel's death implied that deputies had nothing to do with it. Daniel had simply been found strapped in a chair unconscious after being placed in restraints. The sheriff's account released to the media would give any reasonable person the impression that Daniel had died from natural causes. The only role the deputies play, according to the sheriff, is when they discovered Daniel Lissenbigler's body during a welfare check. But the Sheriff Department's account about how Daniel died is incomplete. More important, it's not supported by any law enforcement standards related to the care of inmates. Under properly maintained jail conditions, no one should ever die in police custody. Deputies and police officers are trained to control combative inmates and prisoners. In some instances, force is required inside jail facilities to maintain order. However, it's clear from the record that some law enforcement agencies cross the line using force for punishment. We believe that this may have motivated the unusual conduct reported to us by witnesses in the Daniel Lissenbigler homicide.
I guess they had sprayed mace or something in a bag and put it over his head, is what I heard. And the boy started hollering and screaming and telling them that his eyes was burning, his face was burning, and that his throat was swelling shut and he couldn't breathe, and that went on for 5 or 10 minutes. Then he started gagging, and that went on for, X amount of minutes. The person in there, they couldn't really, tell. He said then it was silence for 15 or 20 minutes. He said before anyone come to help the boy.
The Lissenbigler family was told that Daniel had been strapped in a restraint chair to constrict his movements. According to the sheriff's office, a deputy doing regular checks found Daniel unconscious. But the sheriff's explanation raises some important questions. How could someone die by simply being strapped in a chair? We believe the sheriff's response leaves out facts that might make this explanation plausible. PoliceAbuse.com believes that there is more to this story. We don't believe that a deputy stumbled upon Daniel Lissenbigler unconscious. Moreover, Daniel Lissenbigler did not die of natural causes. Daniel's father told PoliceAbuse.com in an interview he believes his son was murdered. Our review of the evidence thus far leads us to believe this. This jail death does not appear to be a lawful taking of a person's life. The Florida statute for excusable homicide reads as follows. Homicide is excusable when committed by accident and misfortune, in doing any lawful act by any lawful means with usual ordinary caution and without any unlawful intent, or by accident and misfortune in the heat of passion, upon any sudden and sufficient provocation, or upon sudden combat without any dangerous weapon being used and not done in a cruel or unusual manner. The Florida statute does not cover any of the conduct described to policeabuse.com by witnesses in the Daniel Lissenbigler homicide. Inmates in solitary confinement who witnessed the homicide have filled in a portion of the missing pieces that may explain Daniel's death. In a recorded phone call, an inmate family member describes what he was told about the homicide. According to the witness, Daniel was not strapped in a chair and left alone until he was checked by deputies. The witness reports that Daniel was taken out of a nearby cell and placed in the hallway in solitary confinement. According to the witness, Daniel repeatedly begged for his life. A female corrections officer can be heard laughing in the background as Daniel had a hood or a bag placed over his head while he was still in restraints. The witness reports that the deputy sprayed the interior of the bag with pepper spray, something they had perhaps done before, and placed it over Daniel's head. There is no condition within the training of law enforcement officers where pepper spraying a bag or a hood and placing it over a prisoner's head would be allowed. Even if pepper spray were not used, it would still be inappropriate to place a bag or another item over the head of an inmate confined in the manner described by the sheriff's office. And an important footnote to this story is the seriousness of the charges that Daniel had been arrested and confined for. If Daniel Lissenbigler Jr. had been found guilty of trespass and indecent exposure under Florida's misdemeanor statutes, he could not have been sentenced to more than a year in jail. We have requested copies of all inmate complaints registered with the Clay County Sheriff's Office over the past 18 months. We are also investigating Clay County with private investigators trained in police misconduct. If you have an opinion or information about the Daniel Lissenbigler homicide, contact us on our website and follow this case on policeabuse.com.